I'm Zoe Mutter, Editor-in-Chief of British Cinematographer magazine, and before we get going I just want to say some thanks. So huge thanks to Nanlux for sponsoring this event, to Mars for providing this incredible space, and obviously thanks to Alice and David and all of you for coming tonight.
From the beginning, there was always a master plan for Wicked for Good. We knew that this was always going to be a bigger story than movie one. That was their youth. Those kids have to grow up, and they have to make choices that may last a lifetime. This isn't school anymore. We knew everything in Wicked for Good, the temperature had to be turned up, and the stakes had to be higher.
We got to really sort of explore Glinda and Elphaba's beautiful, complicated friendship.
You never saw me.
I was never here. Do you understand?
No, I can't bear this anymore. Their sisterhood is so nuanced. I think that's why I've always loved it so much.
Love stories usually have a definitive ending, which is happily ever after. But friendships are waves you go through that are both good and bad. It's a harder narrative thing to portray, and I love that. We really wanted this to feel like the epic conclusion of a friendship that we actually had with these people.
So this film is vast in the world that's being created and epic in its emotions. It's a huge undertaking in every extraordinary way.
The scope of the sets is bigger. The lands that we go to are bigger. Thank God it takes thousands of people to make a movie like this, because together you all lift.
Oh my goodness.
All these characters now get a bigger canvas to grow in and experience death, love, fate, destiny, justice. It all comes together in Wicked for Good.
Okay, everyone, I'm just going to welcome Alice Brooks ASC to the stage and David Smith, gaffer of Wicked for Good.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. Just to start, congratulations on two incredible films. I was just wondering, great place to start would just be what made working on those two projects so special, and what draws you to musicals as well, Alice, because I know you've shot quite a few with Jon M, the director.
I think what most people don't know is they think we either shot the first movie and then the second movie, or that we shot them back to back, but we actually shot simultaneously. So some days in the morning we would be shooting scene 30 of the first film, and in the afternoon we'd be shooting scene 100 of the second film. And so it was a huge undertaking in terms of how do we follow the storyline, how do we follow the visual cues of the movie. And so when you step back and look at both movies, there's one huge visual arc, but each movie has its own distinct visual style. And Jon and I, when we first started talking about the movies, he's a very emotional storyteller. And we started prepping this movie 2 years before I met David.
Yeah.
And he called me while I was making a movie with him called In the Heights. We were in post on In the Heights, and it was during COVID. And he said our next movie was going to be Wicked. And so it was really great, because while they were writing the scripts, I had a chance to just talk to Jon every day and talk about emotions of each scene. And so we talked about the first movie, some of the emotional intentions. We break everything down into one-word intentions. And the first movie had words like yearning and longing and joy and choice. And the second movie were sacrifice and surrender and separation and consequence. And it became very clear early on in those conversations that the first movie would live in the glow of effervescent daylight, and the second movie would be steeped in a maturity and a weight and a density that you start to see at the very end of the first movie.
And what references were you looking at during that process? What inspired you, and how were you looking at the stage play, the original Wizard of Oz, and the books?
We looked at the original Wizard of Oz. We looked at, or I read the L. Frank Baum books. I think Jon did as well. So those books were written in 1900, the original Wizard of Oz books, and Elphaba, the character Elphaba, is named after L. Frank Baum, Elphaba, L. Frank Baum. And so it was, so that was huge inspiration. And then Dave and I had movie club once a week, which at first Dave was skeptical about. And we'd watch movies, but we didn't watch anything contemporary. I worked with a colorist years and years and years ago who said he didn't watch any contemporary movies because he didn't want to be on trend, and he didn't want to be copying whatever was hot at the moment. And so I didn't go to the movie theater for a really long time. I'm caught up now, but there was a period of time I didn't watch anything in the theater. I only would watch old movies, and so some of those movies were The English Patient, and Spartacus, and Sound of Music, and we watched Memoirs of a Geisha. We watched Tree of Life, which isn't that old, but we watched Tree of Life. Jon originally said he wanted the world of Oz to feel as if Terrence Malick had stepped into Oz.
And so that was just to make sure you were all on the same page when you were watching that movie club. And then when you came on board, David, can you just run through your prep process? Because I know you like to do things.
Sure. I mean, I was very fortunate. Obviously, the filmmakers like Alice and Jon and Nathan Crowley had obviously spent because they'd been in prep for quite a while and moved countries and come to England. So there was a lot of concepts in place. You know, obviously there was a huge and emotional content that was already there with Jon and Alice. So it was just trying to dive into what that was, and then you kind of start to look at sets. And Nathan was like, there was a model. I remember walking one day into the what you call the war room, and I walked into the war room, and there was a model there, and I was like, that scale can't be right. That makes that set 800 foot long, and it's 500 foot wide, and it's 60 foot high. Can't be one set. Have you got the right? And it was the right, and pretty much most of the sets ended up being in that kind of scale. And it was an amazing process. We kind of went through, I mean, it was a huge undertaking. We shot on 17 sound stages between Leavesden. We were supposed to start at Sky, but the stages weren't ready, so we were on 4 stages in Leavesden, four in Leavesden. Then we were on 12 at Sky, and then 2 at Platinum. And in those 17 stages, it ended up being, we had 73, I counted it the other day, 73 iterations of each of sets. So either the stage would be turned over very quickly, or it would be a completely different lighting setup. Like we would be shooting Jeff Goldblum, who plays the Wizard. We only had for 4 weeks to shoot him out entirely for both movies. And so in the morning, there was one morning I remember that we shot the end of the second movie in the throne room, and then we had to shoot Wonderful. The throne room, which was built up to 45 feet tall, with these concentric circles, and there's a rainbow of light that swirls around as Elphaba and the Wizard and Glinda do this dance number in the throne room. And so I called that a different iteration. So there were 73 different iterations, and then 5 backlots. 5 backlots. I mean, we first went to one of the backlots, literally went to Ivanhoe it was a grassland that we was going to build 4 sets on, and we parked at the front, and they said, well, let's start at the set at the back, and we started walking to the 4th set, and my watch said, do you want to record this as an outdoor walk? You've just done 1 kilometre. That was the end of the 4th set, just to give you an idea. It was literally...
Our Shiz set and our Emerald City set were each the size of 4 American football fields each. So it was everyone, all the Sparks got a lot of steps in every day.
A lot of steps.
And can you just run through your prep process and what you use? Because you say you draw things in advance. Is it Omni?
Omnigraphal,
Yeah.
yeah, I use Omnigraphal quite a lot. So it's literally, spend a lot of time with the art department. We spend a lot of time going through it and making sure at a very early process that as the sets are starting to be designed and way before, like in the prelim stage, we can get involved, because then we can have an influence on, is the stage big enough, are the windows in the right place? And I mean, to be fair, Nathan and his team and Ben Collins, they were brilliant at the needs. I mean, it was kind of a pleasure to be part of those sets. Difficult not to like them nicely, really, but literally, I think the more you get involved, and we'd sit there and make sure that everything fitted, and they were, like, because you're also doing it for 2 movies and 2 different looks, you just have to make sure you've got enough stuff in place to be able to give it 2 different looks, 2 different moods,
And I know John liked to shoot a lot 360 and a lot practically. How did that impact how you planned, how you shoot it and light it?
Well, first we had these sets that were 360 degrees, and the idea was to shoot as much in camera as possible, and which for a big fantasy movie is very different than studios are making movies now. And I was with Nathan this morning, and he reminded me that the very first day I got to London and was at Sky, David was in my office. He's like, we have to go to the art department immediately. And I said, why? I guess because you had just figured out the scale. And so, and we had never even met in person. We had only met on Zoom at this point. And so we went up to the art department, and I don't think a day went by that we weren't there for hours at a time, because we had to understand how each set was being constructed and understand the scale, and we'd look at it in Unreal and make plans, and then we'd have to ask Nathan to change things, because there were a lot of needs we had.
Can you just explain how you work with Unreal Engine actually to plan this for both of you?
Do you want to talk about it, or me?
Yeah, I mean, literally, Nathan was really good at it, and we used it in so many different ways. And it's one of those tools these days that you can actually visualize what is coming and how what the achievement of where you're going to get to. That with the concepts, I mean, it was a really good.
Yeah, and I mean, I love Unreal. I think everyone should learn Unreal as a cinematographer or gaffer or directors, producers even. Just understanding that program to such a deep level has been extraordinary. And the way we used it on Wicked was everything from, we stood out in the middle of fields in Ivanhoe a year before we were going to be shooting there, and we needed to figure out what exact degree the set needed to be orientated so that the sun would be in the right position. And the same with the tulip fields. Yeah. We worked with the tulip farmer to plant, 9 million tulips were planted for the movie. And we worked with the tulip farmer in Norfolk to plant the tulip bulbs in a direction that he doesn't usually plant them in, so that the sun would be in the right direction on April 15th when we were going to shoot this, and this was August the year before, so that it would line up with where the sun position was in Munchkin Land, so that the tulip field and Munchkin Land could be comped together into a single shot, and the sun would be in the right position.
And the same with the 5 acres of barley or whatever it was that were for the station.
We built barley. Yeah, we built. I don't know how many acres of barley, but the train station was built on a barley field that was planted also the fall before. Yeah. We understand a lot about planting.
We really did by the end of it, yeah.
And even the tulips bloomed 2 weeks early. And so it was a mad rush it was like a baby was being born 2 weeks early. It was like, the tulips are blooming, the tulips are blooming. And there's only a certain window of time that it was possible to film them. And it was a big risk too, because if the tulips had a frost, then we wouldn't have had those tulips.
And you mentioned earlier that your conversations with Jon are as much about emotion as they are technical, and obviously emotion comes through in the colour you use. So I just wondered how you work with the other HODs to inject colour into scenes, with the second film being more kind of darker in its look and tone.
Yeah, I made what I now refer to as a color script, which is a term used in animation. And I didn't really realize at the time I was doing it, but I keep looking at pictures of my office, and I would take one still, one reference still, whether it was from a movie or a painting or our camera tests or concept art from the art department, and take one still per scene. And this is after my emotional conversations with Jon. And if you looked at my wall and you stood back and you softened your gaze, so there was one for both movies. We treated both movies as if they were one. In many ways, it's 5 hours of movie. And you could soften your eyes and look at the wall, and you could see the tonality and the contrast and the color shift of what eventually our movie was going to be. And we would go through those images and talk about those images and light based off of those ideas, and also being able to change them. Like Mark Platt wanted to understand what the movie was going to look like, so we stood in my office and looked at them. And I could also then, as things shifted during prep, I could swap the images for different images and iterate over and over again until we were filming, and even after that, since the shoot was so long.
Yeah.
And David, we're going to go into more detail with me, see some of the clips later, but if you could just run through what you were looking for in terms of the fixtures for when you're planning lighting for such huge productions and working on two at once with 20 plus musical numbers across the films.
Yeah, I mean, you're choosing the fixtures based on, obviously, artistic. You need to look at the space. First of all, you need what you can do, and the quality of light. Obviously, nobody really looks at what the light looks like. It's what comes out of the light is the most important thing. But also, just because there were so many revamps, there were so many different scenarios that obviously film 1, film 2, and then different scenes were in that. So a lot of the fixtures were based on what it is that you're trying to light. Do you know what I mean? Rather than just going in and say, oh, let's just put this in and do that. So, and because Jon and Alice had such a vision about the colour and how it changed, and you know, and the different spaces. I mean, you know, as we know, shiz doesn't really exist, and there was a world that the guys were trying to recreate. So we was trying to make sure that we had the right fixtures in place to be able to recreate what that was.
But also, David and his team, it was, I mean, I actually, when I was sitting we just finished grading the movie 4 weeks ago, coloring the movie 4 weeks ago, and I sat and looked at every single crew member on the list and read every person's name. And between lighting and grip and camera, there were over 200 people on that list. So it was a massive team to oversee day in and day out. Is that right? Is that number right?
Probably.
Okay.
I don't know.
Anyway, so, but I mean, I counted it. So unless, I hope no one was missing.
Yeah.
So, but it was,
Not sure if it was a good thing or a bad thing.
but it was really and truly, it was, and looking at like organizing all those people and the lighting and how we wanted to be able to change things. Oh, I didn't even talk about your 360-degree question. So I've been working with Jon Chu for 25 years. I shot his short musical when we were in college together, when the kids are away, and we bonded over our love of musicals. And no one was making musicals at the time. It was pre-Moulin Rouge, pre-Chicago, and the Hollywood musical was dead, and we were these two kids who just wanted to grow up and make musicals. And Jon loves to be able, like I said, all he cares about is emotion. And so In for Good, which is the last number in the movie, it takes place in Keamako Castle. And we had this, I wanted to light the movie with every color of the rainbow. And color means something in Oz, and each color represents something. And so for me, orange was the color of Elphaba's transformation, and blue was the color of love between Glinda and Elphaba. And you see that blue first in the Ozdas ballroom, and then you see it in For Good, and in the moonlight in For Good, and in the color of the walls in For Good, and at Keamako Castle. And we had real torches. We lit it with real torchlight on the walls with flame. And And so that was the orange and the blue in that scene. And it's this very intimate scene and very quiet moment. And we kept trying to end the scene. We shot on 2 days. It was a Thursday and a Friday, and we kept trying to finish the scene in this big crane shot, and it just like wasn't working. It didn't work at all. And Jon and I kept going, we don't have this, and like, what are we going to do? And in the first movie, the Elphaba and Glinda occupy most of the same frames together. They split the 2:3:9 frame almost perfectly. But in the second movie, they are apart most of the time. And so we were able to treat the characters very differently in the second movie. And Glinda's shots are refined and elegant and feel like you're in this, and sort of fake in some ways. So you feel like you're in an old musical, and they are mostly crane shots. And then Elphaba is treated, we introduce her in these tight close-ups, tighter than we've ever seen her before. And they're handheld, and it's raw and emotional and textured. And so then when they are together, though, we wanted to pull at your heartstrings a little bit, and we do things like match exact shots that we matched from the first movie, with hands being held, the exact same silhouettes of their backs. They look into camera in both movies, directly into camera at each other. And we realized while we were shooting that we were not doing that in For Good. And luckily we figured it out. But then we had an issue, which is then Jon wanted to do this 360-degree shot that matched Defying Gravity. At the very end of Defying Gravity, we circle them once as they have their goodbye there. And we also circle them in the Asda's ballroom. And he wanted to match that. But to do a 360-degree shot, we weren't ready for lighting-wise. And it was the end of the day, too, and it was after we wrapped, but we decided we'd come back on Monday morning. And so David and the electric team and me and my 10-year-old daughter, she was 7 at the time, came to pre-lights on the weekend, we went back on Saturday or maybe Sunday or both. Okay. And David had come up with a rig to go above where the two women were standing, so that we could chase the light as we went around. But we didn't have anything hanging in place, so that all had to be rigged. And I think it was like 8, and we also had to figure out, like, how is the Steadicam going to move around them? At what speed is it going to move around them? And we had done so many of them at this point, right? This was like April in our schedule, so we were about halfway point. And David and Daniel Balking spent 6 hours there, and my little girl's like falling asleep on the set. And David comes up to me, he's like, "Don't worry, it will be ready tomorrow morning, and you should go home." And so I did, and it was, anyway, I'm very grateful for that, so thank you.
Thank you.
It all worked out well in the end. And then you were saying that the framing was different between the two films, but you were working with the same camera and lens package.
Same camera and lens package.
Specific ideas about the lens flare as well. So could you just run through that, and also how you achieved that in terms of the lighting for that type of lens flare that you wanted when working with Panavision?
We worked with, we used what they're called Ultra Panavision 2s from Panavision now, but they were prototype lenses, and we used the same lenses. We went back and forth with, should we shoot the two movies on 2 different sets of lenses, and then decided it needed to feel, the part of it feeling like a complete film is that they were shot on the same lenses. And we shot Glinda with a 75 millimeter lens for her close-ups, and Elphaba with a 65 millimeter lens for her close-ups. And we found that during camera tests, each lens treated each of the women in a different way. But then in the very final scene of the movie, I shot Glinda on Elphaba's 65 millimeter lens as she It's a spoiler as she finally becomes truly good.
And you were looking for a specific look in the flare as well, weren't you? That I think was.
Like a softness and a romanticism, yeah.
And how did you work with David to ensure that was achieved in terms of the lighting to get that look with the flare?
I mean, that was obviously once Alice has framed it up and we get into it, it's just making sure that it's not too much of putting the units in the right place and literally not to distract too much of the frame, but obviously to a point that Alice was just happy that, you know, Pablo, our visual effects supervisor, wasn't always the most impressed with it, was he?
Were you very involved in the lens testing process as well? Did you know at
Oh,
every
yeah.
stage?
I mean, we were still testing 2 sets of lenses
We was.
during prep. I
Prep, we
forgot
was.
about that because you were there the day we picked our lenses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we had gone back and forth. I had been working with Dan Suzuki for a really long time, but we had one lens. We had a 35 millimeter lens for the longest time. We didn't have a full set of lenses. And slowly the lenses would start coming to us and we'd shoot more and more with them. But I started testing, I had a different set of lenses I was testing simultaneously in case the lenses weren't ready in time.
And can you just run through some of the fixtures you're working with? Because I know you would work with Nanlux product. It was a prototype.
Nanlux, we used a few Nanlux. They was pretty early days for those guys. But Nanlux have come on, you know, leaps and bounds in the last 2 years. But we was using the 900s back then, and it was a fairly new light for us. But we used that quite a lot. I mean, we kind of went through a lot of the stuff. Universal were our lighting company. There was a fairly new company at the time in terms of this scale of movie. So they was investing still quite heavily into Cineo, sky panels, vortexes. But we went back, you know, we had some space lights, we had Dinos. We kind of went through, very much a full card of, just because the sets were so big, it was very much dependent on what it was. There was some brand new stuff that was coming out at the time. You know, the blades were just coming out, so we was using the Cineo blades. So it depends on where we were there.
I mean, we started prepping in in June 2022, we started going on recce's, going on location scouts in June 2022, and then we started production. We shot for 2 weeks before Christmas hiatus, so December 22, and then, yeah.
Yeah, and for some of those sequences, they were on backlot, so obviously that's very weather dependent. So how were you working with the natural light in combination with fixtures and weatherproofing, all of that? How did that process work?
I mean, we had to obviously protect where we needed to protect the sun, and then recreate in the same way. But again, because of the sheer size of the sets, a lot of it was on, you know, on large machines, on cranes, etc., that we had to, you know, put over the top of the sets. Then, like for instance, you know, one of the sets there was 5 pages of dialogue over 2.5 days in the middle of Chiz, which is right in the middle of basically water. So you physically get, you know, coverage when the sun came out, and we're doing, you know, Glinda and Elphabert's close-ups for nearly 5. You know, to be able to protect that, we had to chase the sun around, and obviously chase the lights around as the day went on, really.
And in the first movie, I had this idea where the sun would always rise for Glinda and set for Elphaba. And so the last 40 minutes of the first film takes place, it is all, the last 40 minutes is all one long sunset from Wizamania through till Elphaba leaps off the building and finds her power as she flies off into the sunset. And I had this idea, and the end of the movie, Defying Gravity, originally was scripted all as night. And so I talked to Jon about it, can that be sundown? And he said yes. But then we were sitting looking at the lighting plans, and I suddenly was like, oh no, I called you. That's what it was. I called you, and I'm like, can I come by your office? I said, could we possibly do this? I want to move the sunset earlier. Can we possibly do this as a what's it called? Night for dusk. Night for sundown. And we're shooting at the Emerald City, which is an exterior set for the size of 4 American football fields. And it's July. We're shooting in July, where the sun is only down for a few 6 hours or so
Exactly,
here.
at the most.
And so, I went to his office. We sat there and worked it out, and David's like, but there's going to be a lot of people to convince to do this. And I said, yes, I understand that. Because suddenly a scene that was going to be shot during the day is going to be night, and you only have 6 hours instead of 10 hours, and paying people more to work overnight, and all the issues with working overnight. Plus, there were so many dancers and a huge number of background players in these numbers. And so I called John Chu and explained to him why I wanted to do it. And that's why I love working with John, is he is a complete collaborator to an incredible degree. He listens to everybody's ideas. He takes them in. The way he listens to people is beautiful. And he said, okay, I want to do this. He's like, but we've got to get Mark on board. He's like, I'll call Mark in the morning. So Mark Platt's our producer. He calls Mark, and Mark jumped on board immediately, and he went and sold the idea to Universal. Our AD was so upset about this idea. He was like, you've got to be kidding me. And we did it, but the way, so we use these light fixtures. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
we recreated basically, the sun with dinos, basically, a large number of dinos, and it happened to be one of the shortest nights of the year, and it rained all night long.
It did rain all night.
So we ended up building whole canopies out of machines to keep the rain off of everybody, as well as trying to light it.
But because we weren't we also needed to build up our ambience, and we weren't on a stage, so we had cranes everywhere with, what size were they, 20 by 20?
40 by 40, we had
40 by 40.
with the aquabattens on,
With the
and then dinos.
These lights that David built for Eternals, yeah. And so they're waterproof LED fixtures. And the problem with shooting on grassland, which I don't think anyone really knew, it was a turf farm when we went there, is that the wind was crazy high. And so David explained to me we couldn't put a rag under it because we would be shut down immediately. And like, a lot of pressure was on us because or me, I should say, it was an idea I had, and if it didn't work, then it was all my fault. And David, being an amazing collaborator, said to me, it was figuring out how we wouldn't suddenly have to be in the middle of the night taking down cranes. And he's like, we can't have rags underneath, but we need really soft light. And so that's where the aquabats came into play, and then we had dinos placed everywhere to act as sort of a zigzag of sun as it was bouncing off buildings.
Yeah. And you're working with a mixture of old and new fixtures and tungsten and LED. So can you just run through what that portion of LED was and what you were working on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of the power that we needed for the stuff that we was doing there. I mean, a couple of years ago, the V24s, for instance, weren't available. The bigger Nanluxes weren't available. So you kind of went back to slightly old school lighting, and the dinos were the perfect, the softness, the type of light that you get out of the dino, and you bunch them together. It worked really well for what we was really trying to achieve. And with a combination of like the aquabats, that we was obviously able to manipulate the color, because it was as soon it was dark enough, we was turning over. So there was a little shift in color as the night grew, and then we obviously balanced it out, and then as it starts to come back and you're still shooting when the sun's coming up and it's not supposed to, you're kind of balancing it out again. But
and we did have, the second movie, there's a huge amount of night exterior in Emerald City as well, so we had to be prepared for that too, but that was we knew we were doing that as night shoots. There's a sequence called March of the Witch Hunters that leads into Girl in the Bubble, which we're going to look at, and that was all night, and again, we lit, they're carrying torches. We lit with flame light as well, and you see it you see Emerald City in a very different view than you see it in the first film, and it's very shadowy and very intense and very dense and beautiful blacks.
And you've worked on a lot of large-scale productions, so I was just wondering, when working on something as big as Wicked and Wicked for Good, what you thought the future of the fixtures being used would be? Is it LED, large-scale LED, for both of you really? What do you see as the future for lighting those type of huge productions?
I mean, the manufacturers are coming out with, like Nanlux, for instance, and they're coming out with newer fixtures and different. It's growing. They're working out. It's all about heat. They're working out how to kind of make that heat sink work by making the fixtures bigger, and proof by the one sitting at the back, like the 5000 beat, which is an amazing fixture. So the more that the guys can basically get bigger emitters for us, then obviously LED is gonna at some point. I wouldn't say, because it's not for everybody, not everybody, but it is a useful tool, and it's becoming so much more versatile for us.
And obviously, sustainability is a key topic as
Massive.
well. So there was a green initiative.
There was,
Could you just run through that as well, the initiative, the film?
Yeah, I mean, we try to be as efficient as we can. Like a lot of the stages, we were only LED, like literally. And if we could only go LED on the stages, there was a conscious decision made to try and make it that, just because it's the right thing to do, you know.
And I mean, when we were testing, as I said before, we used every color of the rainbow to light different scenes in the movie, and we do our testing and find a really wonderful mix using LEDs.
Mm-hmm.
So that extended into all departments. That sustainable initiative was across the board.
Across the board, yeah.
You see that becoming a bigger part of productions moving forward? Do you think that's?
Oh, 100%. I mean, even to the small things that add up, like I never printed a script on this movie. I never took sides. Everything was on my iPad. You know, we didn't print things, and which is
try and be as paperless as you can.
Yeah,
you know.
And has the way you prep with Jon changed? Because you've known each other since film school, and obviously the production has got bigger and bigger. Has that process evolved, or does it still kind of maintain similar?
I remember sitting in the middle of Emerald City, and we're on the ground looking at the iPad, and Jon looks at me and he goes, "It's just like we're back in film school." And I said, "But we're sitting in the middle of Emerald City." And he has this childlike wonder to him that is just so magnificent, and we have known each other for so long, and now we're making a movie about friends. And what's amazing about working with your friend is that it's uncomfortable, because you can be uncomfortable together. You can walk into the unknown together, and you're willing to be literally on this movie knee deep in dirt and stand together and go, okay, we'll get through this together. And our process has changed and evolved over the years. He asks everyone on his team to dream bigger than they've ever dreamed before. And the two of us are constantly pushing each other. And I every time I saw a cut of the movie, he's open to me giving notes. And so I call him, and I call our editor Myron, and have long conversations about what I felt was missing in the movie as they were cutting, or could you try this instead, or remember that original intention we had 5 years ago. I don't think it's there anymore, and I know we have the footage. What if you do something with that? And so I think. I mean, of course we've changed. We both have children now. We both have families, and we grew up together. But I think our hearts are in sync.
Yeah. And what was that process like for you, David? And how do you work with your lighting crew and your rigging gaffers? What were you working with people you'd collaborated with before in that sense?
I was. I mean. My rigging gaffer is actually my oldest son, so that makes it. There's a little bit of a shorthand. I kind of get told what to do quite a lot, as you do. But no, I mean, I have a team that I've worked with really for a long time. Very fortunate, really. So, and the collaboration, to be honest with you, all of us are only as good as the team that are around us. And the more that you work with your team, the better shorthand that you get. And especially on a project like this, with someone like Jon and Alice, it's infectious for us. Like the enthusiasm that these guys had for this movie with Mark and with Nathan, it really shone through to everybody. Not only my department, special effects, art department. Everybody was it was a very collaborative movie, I have to say it was. But that kind of comes from, people like Jon and Alice, and it makes it a lot easier. Our lives become a lot easier, which was great, to be fair.
And we touched on this before, and we probably will in the clips as well, but is there anything you wanted to add about how you work with production designer Nathan Crowley in terms of the practical lighting and any kind of obstacles there that you had to work around?
Yeah, I mean, Nathan is such a collaborator, to be honest with you, and very often when what he's like somebody that kind of gets into a concept necessarily a little bit before the set gets designed, which is lovely. So you get to visually look at something that you want, and obviously John's got such a vision for what he wants, and then Alice would be part of that, and we'd be able to work it out. I mean, for instance, like Glinda's apartment, just the practicals that we ended up putting on the wall, and just the space that the shots that we ended up doing, which are in movie 2, and the fact that the camera just goes round and round, up the stairs, down the stairs. Nathan was amazing, wasn't he?
He was. I mean, one of my favorite shots in the second movie, in For Good, is this shot of Glinda. Her wedding has just fallen apart, sorry, I wish everyone had seen the movie, but it's okay. So then, so she's devastated basically, and it's a medium shot, handheld, and she starts to walk forward into close-up, and she gets closer and closer and closer, and this is her tightest close-up in either of the films. And it's handheld, and we didn't give editing an option. Behind her, out of focus, are Madame Warble and the Wizard, and you can only hear what they're saying, and the sound in the film has been brought way down. And we had space lights above, but they were all turned off at this point, and the entire room was lit with these beautiful practicals that were not originally in the set. It was a cavernous set with no windows, all the way up to the Reds, and these practicals, and Nathan was having a really hard time figuring out what the practicals should be in there, and David had these 300-watt light bulbs that looked like carnival lights, and so together with the art department, they built these arrays of these 300-watt bulbs, and they were in five bulbs per array, and placed around the room, and so the entire room. I don't know how big the room was. Do you remember?
Kind of 80 by 80, at least, maybe a bit more, yeah.
So we've got the practicals on, and then she walks into close-up, and the only thing we lit her with was one dado, dimmed all the way down, and there's just a little ping of light in her eyes, and you watch her make this decision, and there's no cutting, and the camera is handheld and just slowly moving around her, and you let it just sit and sit and sit as she makes the decision to do the most wicked thing in the movie.
I think we're actually just going to move on to watching the clips, because I had lost track of time a little bit, so I just want to make sure we get to these clips. So I think we're going to watch the first clip, which is Wonderful. If we could play that first.
Wonderful, they'll call you wonderful.
Come and be wonderful.
Trust me, it's fun.
We will be wonderful.
You'll make me wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
Going like this in my head.
If you could just run through what John's vision was for that and the creative process of planning it, and also how you work with lighting cues, because that's something we didn't touch on before.
Yeah, that'll be fun to talk about. There were a lot. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of lighting cues in this movie. It all came, I mean, we really wanted the movie to feel handmade, even though, like, you get the script for Wicked and you think, oh, you can do, there's a feeling that it can be as big as you want it to be, and you could be as showy as you want it to be, but at the heart of it, it's really this relationship movie, this love story between Elphaba and Glinda. And they didn't send us the very beginning of this clip, but they basically haven't seen each other for many, many years. And John Chu had this idea at the very beginning, that he wanted it to feel like the Peter Pan ride at Disneyland, which is it's one of the original Disney rides that you get on, and you fly over London, and it's magical. And right before moving my family to London for 14 months, we went to Disney World in Florida, and I rode the Peter Pan ride over and over and over again, knowing that John wanted it to feel like Peter Pan ride. But what he didn't tell anyone until 3 weeks before we were going to shoot was he actually wanted a ride for them to get on.
Sure.
And so suddenly the set's built, and he's like, no, I need a ride. I need it to start at the top it's a 2-story set. I need it to start at the top, and it needs to come down, and it needs to be for this piece of music. So it needs to be long enough that they can sing this, and we're gonna, and the lights need to dim off, and there needs to be a pink and green thing going on. And so suddenly special effects had this massive task of figuring out how to get this track. So they built a track.
Like a roller coaster, really.
It was like a roller coaster that they got on, they clipped in, and they're floating down, but we're shooting it on the set. We didn't shoot on blue screen, and then we have to figure out how to get our crane in place, because we need a crane that's big enough to pull them in, and none of the walls can float because this was never the plan. And so you've got to fit a ride, then you've got to fit the crane, and then it's like, okay, where are the lights going to go, David?
Yeah.
And so then we use candy lights, right? Your candy lights that you manufacture yourself to place around the set. So to dim down the lights in the room. I'll let you talk for a minute.
No, I mean, literally, like Alice was saying, it was a logistical nightmare for all of us, really, in the short time to do it and pull it off. And there was a lot of colour changing within it. And it comes out and goes into that other thing. So it wasn't like you could use time code, for instance, because there was also dialogue in there. So you had to come out of a musical number into dialogue so it was all very much done on the fly. And there was a lot of working out between departments of where the crane was going to go, where the lights were going to go,
And the throne room has the concentric circles, and Daniel Balking we unfortunately lost him for about 2 weeks because he was on that, in the throne room or at least part of the day, right?
Yeah.
Like programming all of those lights, the rainbow of lights, because the rainbow was like the possibility. Rainbow meant to me possibility, Elphaba's possibility. She has been demonized in the land of Oz, but the wizard has invited her to rejoin him, and so she has the possibility of continuing on her own path or rejoining with the wizard. And so the rainbow of light was this idea of possibility, and finding the right timing for it as it spins around the room. And all those concentric circles, as you look up, those are all real in camera.
Yeah.
And the live lighting cues also came so much from the women sang live. We recorded all live vocals too, and so it was amazing to watch David and Daniel doing all the. They used mini desks, right? 2 mini desks.
Yeah.
I actually own one now myself. I don't know why, but I was given one as a present when we wrapped.
Yeah.
But mini desks, there were 2 of them, 12 channels each.
Yeah.
Okay, 12 channels each, and you just watch him and Daniel do these beautiful choreographed lighting cues live while we were filming, and it would be me and David and Daniel, and then Mark Platt was always in our tent too. It was an incredible experience. Mark Platt is one of the best producers I've ever worked with in my life. And he would stand there, because I had the best monitors, and so he could see, and he would stand there all the time, just like, and I'd hear his thought process, not about camera or lighting, but listening to him think out loud about the story and making sure all the intentions of the story were being told. And he would ask questions about, like, why do you think that this decision is being made? And he would ask me about everything from set design to what they were wearing, to the hair, to the acting. He would stand, and it was an amazing learning experience standing with him all for that year.
He's an amazing man.
Yeah.
And did working with the live cues help create more of a feeling of the live stage play of Wicked as well? Did it help on the set?
Yeah, we wanted it to feel like a lot, right? We wanted there to be a feeling of a live show, and so many of the cues you'd never, like this one's obvious, but the ones that are not obvious are the ones that I love, because you don't see them, but you can feel them. And it creates this visual heartbeat to the movie that is tangible and real and imperfect. And I love that that Wicked, everything doesn't have to be perfect. There's this handmade feel.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned that the framing was different here. They weren't always shown together. But in the scenes that they were, how did you go about shooting and lighting a green-skinned character who's dressed in a dark outfit with a very fair-skinned with white outfit on? How did that?
With lots of camera tests.
Testing, I always hate testing.
I mean, it took a really long time to test the green makeup and to test Ariana's makeup. And luckily, I mean, Frances Hannon, our makeup artist, is brilliant and wonderful and just so dedicated. I mean, everyone, we were very lucky. Everyone was so dedicated to this film. And for the green makeup, we kept doing tests, and every time Elphaba was in warm light, she looked gray during all these green makeup tests, and it was really frustrating. At the same time, visual effects is doing tests to try to make, to see how well they can make her green. So we were testing without makeup on and then with makeup on, and it was, and Cynthia was like, I have to be green. When I walk onto set and I'm green, everyone looks at me differently. She's like, I need to feel that. And so she wanted to be green, but we're like, how on earth are we gonna light this movie? And then finally Frances found a discontinued product out of Canada that had a fluorescent base. And when she mixed it with the green that we all loved, suddenly we could light it any way we wanted to, as if it were real skin. It was amazing.
It's a game changer,
Yeah. And then we did that, and then we had to figure out Ari, because they are next to each other. And Glinda's makeup ended up also having a iridescence to it. So it really was beautiful to be able to work off both their skin.
Yeah. It was very lucky with Frances, and the team. It was amazing.
Yeah. I hugged Frances for about 20 minutes this morning when I saw her, so I love her.
And we're going to watch the next clip, so that's the wedding sequence. If we could cue that up. I'm not sure if you want to start talking about the significance of colour maybe, or the prep that was involved in...
Actually, maybe a shot choice, because in the script, this was always an intercut between the two scenes. We came back and did 2 or 3 days of additional photography in May. We came back to London to do 2 or 3 additional photography days. And I watched the movie right before that. And this is when I love being able to be completely honest with Jon. They had separated the intercut, and it was the wedding, and then it was the secret prison. And it was devastating to me. I was so sad. because we had carefully planned the shots to mirror each other as the two women descend the stairs at the same time, and this secret prison is built right under the hall where she's getting married. So they're both walking towards towards something that they were about to find out, and the wedding is about to be destroyed, and Elphaba has found this secret prison where all these animals have been trapped and imprisoned in the land of Oz, and she didn't realize how really truly awful things had gotten, and it is a big turning point in the movie, and so we have a space where we do have one of the beautiful flares where the light dims up, and that was like, we carefully figured that out.
Yeah.
As the light dims up, as Glinda walks along her yellow butterfly path, and then we've got the single source pounding into the secret prison, and the floor. All we did was that one source with the skip bounce on her face, and just the simplicity of that versus this fairy tale wedding of the pinks and the golds that we lit the wedding with.
Yeah.
Is there anything you wanted to add about lighting those? Any challenges or?
I mean,
your prep process?
we tested those windows, because you remember those windows,
Yeah.
because the hall gets used for many different. Not only the wedding, we used it for some. It's pretty bare in there when the girls walk through it first, right? And just the physical size of the windows, it was okay. So just a single source, and the stage wall being so far away, and what do we? It was the quality of light really that we was looking for, wasn't it? You know, do you remember the Dinos and then the?
Yeah, I mean, I decided I needed to create a photo diary of my life on Wicked, so I've been going through 7,500 photos that I took over that year, and just because this has been 5 years of my life, and I loved it so much, and I don't want to forget anything, and so I've got this picture of Marin, who worked with us, standing for the very first lighting, it was a lighting test, we didn't have camera there, it was just us going after.
Off the wrap.
Oh, no, because we weren't shooting yet. This was even before shooting,
was
because remember, we shot this.
Yeah.
We shot this would have been February 2023. So we just had some window cutouts, and I have a picture of Simon Finney, who is our B camera operator, in one of the windows, and he looks minuscule in there. I mean, these windows were epically big, and so we were figuring out. First we decided to offset the set. It wasn't in the middle of the stage. It took up the entire, C stage?
Yeah.
C stage at Leavesden. We shifted it over first so that we could have enough space on one side to create light source. And we tested a lot of different units, and we ended up with Dinos.
And we didn't touch upon it earlier, but I know that the pleating in Elphaba's dress, it's very important for you to capture that, and particularly in that sequence because it's so dark. I was just wondering how you went around achieving that, working with the costume designer, and what tests you carried out for that.
Well, in the first movie, what people aren't going to necessarily be aware of, the hat in the first movie and the hat in the second movie are actually different, even though they're supposed to be the same. The hat in the second movie has a bigger brim. And spoiler. And so it creates so that gives us an amazing different shadow on her face to cast. And so we did tests on it to figure out where that shadow would fall, like where the shadow line would fall, and it ends up falling right around her nose. But finding, and she wears the hat in most of the second film, and the pleating of the costumes, her costume in this movie is different than the first movie, but in this movie it's a waxed linen jacket, and the wax has this sheen to it that's gorgeous, and so it was beautiful in being able to pick up the light.
We were so lucky with Paul Tazwell.
So lucky.
He had the costumes. I mean, he was just, he was so helpful on every process. For our testing, he was just literally.
Yeah. I mean, we tested every single costume for both of the women as they were building them.
Yeah. And I think we're just going to watch our final clip now, because I want to save some time for audience questions. So, final sequence is Girl in a Bubble, which is one of your favourite sequences. So I think we're going to watch that now.
There's that beautiful girl with a beautiful life, such a beautiful life built on lies. 'Cause all that's required to live in a dream is endlessly closing your eyes. She spins such beautiful stories to sing her to sleep, full of magic and glory and love. She's the girl in the bubble, the bright shiny bubble, blissfully floating above.
Can you just talk about that, because it was a perceived one, and how you would go through the mirror, what your planning was with Jon?
So Jon wanted, this is the pivotal moment for Glinda in the movie, and it is about the person she sees in the mirror and the person she's become, and does she still want to be this person? And it's when she makes her decision to, it's her new choice of not being that girl who she has been for the wizard and the popular girl anymore. And he had this idea that he wanted it to be us to go in and out of mirrors, and not know if you were in a mirror or if you were out of a mirror. And so it ends up, it's about the song's about 3.5 minutes. And it's 7 shots that are stitched together. It's 5 Steadicam shots and 2 45-foot techno crane shots. And the crane shots are used to bring her up and down the stairs, which you don't see in this. Oh, actually, you see the beginning of it, because the ceiling mirror is, that one is, that's the crane. That was the beginning of the crane shot, and then it takes her all the way up the stairs. And it is. This scene to me is why we make movies, because it was every single department working together to make it happen. It was the second musical number we filmed out of both movies. The first was Popular, and then the second was Girl in the Bubble. And so it's very early in our schedule. And we were talking, Jon and I were talking about it, and he's like, and we started watching every YouTube video of every greatest mirror shot in movie history. Contact, I think, is our favorite, and YouTubers who had been making mirror shots, and we just created this huge catalog of it. And like I said earlier, he asks us to dream bigger than we've ever dreamed before, and most of my ideas would come at 2 a.m. And I woke up at 2 a.m. completely awake, and I realized we were going to meet at 8 a.m. Every morning during prep at 8 a.m. we had a production meeting, and we were going to talk about Girl in the Bubble that morning. And Jon and I had talked about what it was going to be, but like, how do we explain it to everyone else? And I got my husband's shaving mirror, I got my daughter's princess bath toys, I got 2 bananas that represented the staircase and a dinner plate that represented the center living room, sunken living room, and I started shooting it with my iPhone. And then I stayed up till I went to work that morning, and we sat there with all these props I had brought in, and we figured out visual effects was there because they needed to stitch it together. David was there, and then David's like, we've got to have practicals on the set. What are we going to do? And so, and production design was there, because when you look, you're looking at a wall with a mirror in it, and then we start to come around, and as we come around, it's a huge math problem. You need to be able to pull back far enough so that you feel like you're in the mirror. So special effects was there. They hinged the wall live in camera as we're pulling back, and then we push back through the mirror and we come around, and they hinge the wall back in live while we're shooting. And the same for the ceiling too, because we had to get up high enough so that the math made sense. And so we had my toys, and we played with my toys that morning, and then the storyboard artist drew it, and then visual effects did a tech viz for us, and then, David, do you want to talk about our about the practicals on the walls? Because the wall sconce lights weren't there on the set.
They weren't there, no. And we went to Nathan and talked to and Lee, who were both great. And it was the type of light that obviously, because she was walking 2 foot past them, up and down the stairs, and we needed them to be able to, as you can see, as Alice says, it's like literally round and round and round. So they needed to be visually good, but also they really needed to help us, light.
And
where you're working with the neutral resin, was that
we did use the neutral resin too. So Nathan wasn't sold on. What? No, but you figured out how to convince him, which was amazing. So Nathan wasn't sold that there should be practical, like they had table lamps, but he wasn't sold that there should be sconces on the walls. And so there are two, and the set is a complete mirror of itself. It's everything symmetrical. And there was a mirror, the first mirror she looks into didn't have any lights, and she walks right up to it, and we're like, we need something. And finally, we, on our Ozdas ballroom set, they were using this clear resin to build the walls, and we could light it any color we had wanted to light, because it's clear resin. And so, I keep looking at the trailer back there. So we've got, so finally he was convinced that he could create columns that looked like the Art Deco architecture that he was working towards, that then we could put tape in.
We put fixtures inside that became winches at the mirror, and which hinges and comes backwards and forwards. So.
And then, but the sconces on the staircase were really the problem too, because he really didn't want sconces on there. And so David went and set up a stereotubes to act as the sconces on just an empty sound stage. And he set them apart, and Ben Collins and Nathan came in, and Lee, and they all finally agreed because this was also live singing, and you had to do how many? I mean, your fingers were just going on this Zimmer board.
As it goes around.
Which would you say was the most challenging set or sequence to light? So you've obviously worked on some huge productions.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, because obviously you get time to plan and prep it, I wouldn't say that any was more challenging than another. There were some more enjoyable ones. I wouldn't say more challenging. The colour one, it's just getting it right on the day, and especially because of the live singing and because of the way that Jon and Alice like to move the camera. You just need to try and give the freedom to be able to move around, and just because you're never quite sure exactly where we never quite know whether it was
Jon is very much, he, like I said before, he is like a kid who likes to play, and so it is his playground to play on, and so you sit there and you watch him, and he walks the set. He walks it as if he's the actors, and I've got all these shots from my iPhone that I just found of him acting out as if he were Elphaba or Glinda when he first gets to set. He gets there, an hour and a half before before call. We're there too.
Yeah.
But he's there walking the set, and you watch him, and then suddenly he comes up with a new idea, and you want to support him and be ready for whatever he wants.
You do find yourself watching Jon an hour before a call, walking around and going, I think I need to put another light over because I know it's coming,
And I am going to leave time for audience questions in a second, but I know there's filmmakers at all stages of their career, and gaffers and cinematographers, directors. So I was just wondering from both of you if there was any advice you could give them in terms of maybe approaching a project of this scale if they were moving onto this type of production.
You can go first.
Thank you. You just need to take it in your stride really when you go. The thing is, if you've got the support of the filmmakers and the crew that are around you, you just got to just move forward with it. Obviously, a lot of it comes with experience, but you have to do these jobs to gain the experience. So you never really know what's around the corner. Just believe in yourself and just keep going. And literally, if you have the right people around you and you have the ideas, then just try and do it with a smile on your face.
I think just understanding. I knew when I was 15 years old that I wanted to be a cinematographer. I'm 46, and it was an incredibly long time before I found any success at all. I had the lowest lows that I don't know how I climbed out of. And when you're in those lowest lows, you think that's what it's always going to be. And when you're in your highest highs, you think that's what it's always going to be. But the truth is that your life, my life, exists somewhere in the middle of those highs and those lows. And I mean, I feel incredibly grateful and incredibly lucky for the last 7 years of my life. On my 39th birthday, I finally had like this really incredible job, I thought, and it was going to be my first network pilot. And it was the first real paycheck I was going to make as a cinematographer. I had gotten in the union at Local 600 when I was 35, and I spent every single dime I made on that movie to join the union. And then I'm 39, and I'm going to do this TV series with John Chu and Christopher Scott, and it's on a network, and I was thrilled. And they have to let you know by 3 p.m. if you're going to, if you're not going to work the next week. And the Monday was when we were going to start. And my husband and I, we were in San Diego, and he was at a conference there, and we were driving from San Diego to LA, and I have my 2-year-old in the back seat asleep, and I get a phone call saying the show's been canceled. And I have never cried so hard in my life. I cried and I cried and I cried the entire ride up. My husband says it's the worst moment of his entire life. And I said to him, I'm done. I have had so many close, almost getting somewhere, but I just have no traction in this world, in this movie-making world. And I said, I want to go figure out what else I want to do in life. And he said, that's fine. And then there was a long pause. And he said, but you can't do it today, and you can't do it tomorrow. You have to stay in this game for 6 more months. And he said, and in those 6 months, you have to try as hard as you possibly can and do every single thing you can. And we live in Portland, Maine, and which is on the East Coast of the United States. And he said, you're going to spend 1 week in LA, 1 week in LA, 1 week at home, 1 week in LA, 1 week at home for the next 6 months. And he said, you're going to call every single person and be as vulnerable as you can possibly be with them. And so I would go to LA and I'd have a coffee, a breakfast, a coffee, a lunch, a coffee, cocktails, dinner. And I did that for about 4 weeks. And at the end of that 4 weeks, one of the people I was just being really honest with how awful it was. And at the end of that 4 weeks, I was having lunch with a woman from Blumhouse who had produced my first union feature, and she said to me, you need a new agent. And I'm like, no one will even talk to me. I'm like, I'm never going to get a new agent. Sorry, are we running out of time? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I said, and she's like, call this person, or I'm going to introduce you to this person at UTA. And I went and I met at UTA, and they brought me on. And a week later, I had this movie, and it was the biggest movie I'd shot at the time. It was a $10 million movie, a romantic comedy with James Caan and Ellen Burstyn, called Never Too Late. And I think the title changed, but that was the title at that moment. And I had felt like it was too late for me. And I did that movie, and while I was doing that movie, 6 months to the day, John called me to do an Apple TV series called Home Before Dark, and it was the first Apple show. And he said, I want you to go in and pitch your ideas on the project, but I'm not going to tell you what I want it to look like. I want you to get this job on your own. And so I went in and I met with Dana Fox, she was the showrunner who ended up being the writer of Wicked. And I met with her, and she was looking through my lookbook. She's like, oh, these are all the same images John pulled. She's like, did you guys, how long have you guys been talking about this? I'm like, oh no, John won't tell me what he wants this to look like. And she's like, but you guys pulled, everything's the same. And I ended up with that job, and 2 months later, I ended up, John, Crazy Rich Asians came out, and suddenly he had been trying to get me in all his movies all along and never could, and suddenly he had this huge success, and he told them I was gonna shoot In the Heights. And so I just can't imagine if I didn't hold on for that last 6 months. So it's every single, when you want to give up, sorry, that was a very long story too. If you want to give up, it's at that moment when you feel like you're ready to give up for real, forever, that's the moment you are closer than you've ever thought you were.
That's an incredibly inspiring story, and it's all paid off. And congratulations again on this incredible pair of films, because they're just stunning, and I'm looking forward to everyone else seeing them. So we've just seen clips, but you'll be able to see it from the 21st. So I just want to move on to audience questions, actually, because I know everyone will have so many questions for you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Teddy Knight. Alice, thank you so much for that story. It was so powerful and resonant. And I wanted to ask you, in that, I'm 46 too, so it's like very resonant. In that moment where you had to prep for that first meeting, how did you find the courage to go in and give your best self without going in and feeling like you were gonna blow it after everything you'd just been through?
I mean, I had nothing to lose, right? There's nothing to lose. It's just sort of like, just be yourself. And I mean, I've got this, Dan from Nanlux gave me this piece of paper right before I started this, and it's about the best prize I've ever gotten in my life. It's from his son, from his 10-year-old son, and it says, "Thank you so much for filming Wicked." And I think it is, I think really and truly just being vulnerable and being honest and being an open book. I mean, we're storytellers. We tell movies about human beings. And if you can't just like go, this is my life, and be vulnerable and be okay with, the scary things, the things that don't look so good about your life, I think it opens up a world of possibility. And so I went into that meeting, and I was dripping. You're talking about my meeting for the TV series? I mean, I was dripping sweat. I stayed up all night. I had flown from Atlanta, where I was making this other movie, that I was already so thrilled to be making that movie, and I flew to LA to go to Paramount to meet on this TV series. But I didn't really know my life was about to change anyway. And so I don't have a good answer, but yeah, just be you.
That was a good answer. Thank you. Thanks for the vulnerability. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions over? Oh, there we go. There.
Hi, thank you for opening up and sharing that experience of not giving up, and yeah, that's really resonates. My question is, from a technical perspective, did you use any lightweight gimbal solutions to do handovers, or any other solutions to do anything? It was all traditional kind of Steadicam?
It's all traditional Steadicam. We had Descender rig for a couple of shots, but it was Steadicam, crane, a lot of remote heads on dollies.
To rewire the crane, didn't we? We basically don't remember.
Oh yeah, that's right. So Guy Micheletti, who is our crane operator, said he had never worked a crane so hard in his life. We had to have the crane rewired 3 times while we were making the movie. Recabled 3 times while we were making the movie.
Not electrically cabled, but the motion cable.
The motion cable. I mean, it was a lot of work. The crane had a lot of work, and just being able to move. I mean, that whole Wonderful was all dolly on a remote head as we're spinning around as we're dancing around the room.
Oh, there we go.
This is incredibly inspiring, and appreciate you both being so open. I'm going to be in pieces when I watch part 2 opening day. Part 1 I watched everything from Odeon West End to on a plane, and that's very different experiences. When you're shooting, do you think about those different experiences for people, or do you just prioritize that someone in the middle of a cinema, is front and center, the best projection, the best sound, and particularly in terms of when color is so important, how are you managing that technically, but also emotionally on set between HDR, SDR, the things we all talk about, but
I mean, I just had a very lengthy color grading on this last movie, and we first color the P3 version, the SDR version, our main theatrical print, right? But then after that, we did the Dolby Vision, and then we did the IMAX version, then we did the HDR version, then we do the home video release. So, right, and I sat through every single one of those because I walked up and I've been on an airplane every other day for the last week. This is the longest span of time I've been in the same city in over the course of the last 2 weeks, actually, and I've been here for 3 days. So while I'm on planes, I want to get my steps in, so I walk up and down, and I watch, walk up and down, and I watch people watching Wicked on the airplane on their little screens, which is definitely not the way we intended the movie to be seen. But the reality is, it's the way most people will see the movie, and I think I grew up going to the movie theater. I remember being 4 or something for the re-release of Star Wars and climbing under the seat because I was so scared. And I remember watching E.T. in the cinema, and my parents, I grew up super poor in New York City. My dad was a playwright and my mom was a singer and a dancer, and we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with the bathtub in the kitchen. And we lived there till I was 10, and it was my mom, my dad, my sister, and 2 cats and a dog in 300 square feet. And my dad would let me watch any movie I wanted to on the tube TV as long as I could read the opening credits. So by the time I was 4, I could read pretty well, and 5, I could read anything, because that's how I learned to read. And then after that, my dad said to me, now you have to know where the act break is. So I had to call out where the end of Act 1 was, and then where the end of Act 2 was. So I understood story structure very early, but I fell in love with movies watching them, both in the cinema and on a TV. And so you want every single, right, and so each version has to be the way it's intended, and each version has such little teeny details that you have to manipulate. So in the color grade, we'd sit there, and we fell in love with our SDR version, and then suddenly we're in Dolby Vision, and you got a totally different color depth. And the Dolby Vision, if you're going to see the movie, see it in Dolby Vision. It's my favorite version. But there is so much light being pushed through, and it's beautiful. And then suddenly you're color timing your home video version, that's not even in the right aspect ratio, and it's pretty devastating.
And thanks so much to both of you for sharing all this insight, and thank you to everyone for
coming. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Thank you.